Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm creating a very simple slimline card, but I'm adding an interactive part. Now for this card I'm using the balloon ride from Paperie Ink and I will use the monkeys. I will also be using this Let's Toast pull tab add-on and then this large slimline with sliders from Fawn. Now first of all, I'm going to stamp out my image, and I did this already one time before, but I'm going to show you again how I do this, how I create this one image out of two stamps without too much fussing around. I'm going to do this twice because just in case something goes wrong. I have two mini misties, which is always handy, but you can also add the two stamps on either side of one misty. And then you can do the same exactly. So I'm first stamping out my image that cannot be covered by the other one, and then I create my mask. Now I have these full stick post-it notes, my favorite kind of masks, because you can often reuse these and they keep sticking, so that's handy. So you need to fussy cut your mask out, and once you have done that you can add it onto your image. Now I added the balloon on the other misty. And before I'm stamping it out, I'm first adding a piece of acetate on top of my paper where I already stamped out the monkeys. And this way I can stamp the image on the acetate and see whether it is aligned perfectly with the monkeys. The lovely thing about this stamp set is that the monkeys and the other animals are on the bottom straight, so it fits perfectly on the balloon, so that's really handy. But as you can see, I was lucky and this balloon was placed perfectly. If not, you can remove the air balloon and do exactly the same. Try to lay it out again. Or you can move your paper underneath the acetate. Make sure that the acetate is in the corner, and then you can move the paper underneath a bit crooked, just until it is aligned perfectly according to you. I prefer starting over, laying that stamp out again and trying it again on the acetate, but everyone has his or her preferences. Now, the mask I'm keeping on the back of the stamp set, and now I have two of these images and I'm only going to use one, so if I want to remake this card or a similar one with the same image, then I already have one stamped out. For the coloring, I stamped these images out using Fawn ink Crunchy Leaf. This is a brown ink, and actually when you use your COPIC markers it gives it a really soft look because you don't have the harsh black outline, but this would work perfectly with black as well. I'm going to color it in really bright colors. This card is for a colleague of mine that is leaving, that has another job soon, and so we are going to write a card with all of the colleagues as well as giving him a little present. So as we all hope that his new job is going to be wonderful and lovely colleagues, I thought of using really bright and joyful colors, and then in my opinion a gender neutral can be yellow orangey color. I think that definitely works. So I thought, well, let's do that as the air balloon, and then we have some browns, and yellow and orange go well with brown. In my opinion, it's all really warm. So therefore I decided upon these colors. Normally I would ask for the favorite color of my colleague, and I did, but then well, they said that, well, yeah, it was red and blue, but a specific red and blue that I cannot combine on a card. I don't know why. Some colors just don't go together, I think, on a card, and if I would have taken the wrong red or the wrong blue that would go together, well, then the whole purpose of the favorite color would not be achieved. So going for the joyful, hopeful colors like these. Now this paper, as I'm lately always using, is a perfect coloring paper from Transotype, which allows me to go back and forth between all of the colors to get that blend that I want. But it also includes for me to have at least 2 layers, except when there is a really small image or part of the image. Sometimes 1 layer is enough, but most of the time I am adding several layers. I decided to keep this basket quite soft because I wanted a bit of a darker brown for the monkeys. And then later on I will be adding some of the details using a COPIC Multiliner to really let everything show up. So here I'm doing my second layer. And I had also contemplated about adding some polychromos just to add a bit more of dimension, a bit more of well, shadows and stuff like that. But then I thought, no, we are just going to keep this card simple as possible. But also using these brown inks from Fawn helped me with having that really soft look on the monkeys. You will barely see the lines of the stamping, which is always nice. I think it has sort of a no line coloring effect without being no line coloring, so that's really lovely. You can achieve that when you're using darker colors than the actual ink that you use to stamp things out. So if you're using browns and you want the no line coloring look without having the issue of the no line coloring ink or anything like that, then I really suggest just using an ink that is slightly lighter than the colors that you will be using. And the tiny monkey I will color the same way, although I had to make sure that you could still see the paw on the head of the bigger one, that it wouldn't disappear because I used the same color, so I was a bit cautious there. But for the rest, everything went really smoothly. And then once this image is colored in, I am going to fussy cut it. Paperie Ink doesn't have matching dies, which is unfortunate, I think, because I love matching dies. But for Paperie Ink, I'm making an exception. I don't mind the fussy cutting. Now, if I wouldn't have stamped it out like this as one image, I would have to cut out both the monkey and the air balloon, which is quite hard. So that's why I prefer layering at first and masking it off there than to have to fussy cut twice. Also the details of the monkeys on the edges, keeping that white border wasn't going to be easy. So I think this is the best solution for me. I'm gonna add that second layer. And I just love how this image comes together. I made another card using this amazing Balloon Ride stamp set, which, if I don't forget it, I will link to at the end of the video. But it's a really lovely set, and I enjoy coloring these air balloons. They are really lovely. They are cute, but at the same time they have a simple touch. And that's also a reason why I love coloring it in, because if there are so many details on the air balloon, then it's really hard to get that blend always, and so this is really a set that I love. So now I'm adding those details on there. I had to watch on the stamp set itself to see how everything was illustrated originally, and that's it. So now I can fussy cut this image out, and then we can work on the background and the moving mechanism. So for the background, I am going to make a really soft ink blended cloudy background, and therefore I have this large slimline with sliders panel cut out. I'm covering those edges because there are stitching details, you know me, I don't have to explain myself again, but I love keeping them white. Then the stencil that you can see is from my favorite things, the cloud stencil. And I'm just going to use peacock feathers and really softly add some blue clouds on there. Now I'm starting on the bottom where I first want a soft layer of the blue, and then I will be adding the clouds right just until halfway. And then I will add a bit of blue on the top and go into white on the bottom area on the top area of the card. Sorry. So I'm making sure to have a soft layer of ink on my brush by tapping off the excess on just the center of the stencil. You can tap it off on a paper, you don't need to tap it off, but it's just to not have those harsh lines when you're ink blending. The paper I'm using is again the Transotype Perfect Coloring paper, which is not as forgiving. So just be careful depending on the paper you're using. Some will be forgiving, others will not. And then it's always handy to start light and build up the color from there. So I thought about leaving it like this, but then I figured out that something was missing. So I did end up cutting out some tiny clouds from the hard air balloon from my favorite things, which matched perfectly just behind the air balloon. Really cute. Having that figured out, I could start on the moving mechanism. Well, first I'm going to add the sentiment. I decided to add it on the bottom, and I'm going to stamp it out just using some black ink. But first, the removal of the purple tape. I love this. So I hope you do too, because I'm always leaving it in the video, because even when I'm editing, I really love watching the whole process, and especially removing masks, because that is so satisfying. So I'm stamping out my sentiment, just using Gina K Design Amalgam ink, my favorite black ink. And then I will be trying to place this moving mechanism as centered as possible. Now, first of all, I have a Slimline card, and just to be sure that I had enough of this moving mechanism, I decided to partially die cut it. So I am putting it in between my plates, and I'm not going to cut it all the way by just leaving the end off, and then I'm moving that mechanism a bit downwards, adding it again, and then I'm going to partially die cut that again. This way I have a bit of a larger piece, and then I'm going to cut out two of these, well, how do you call it? It's to actually secure the moving mechanism on the back, that it goes straight up and down. So I have two because I have a Slimline card, and I thought that it was handy to have two of them. But you can use more or less depending on the card or the place that you want the moving mechanism to go. And then here I really wanted to make sure that I had it centered. I also contemplated about die cutting this slit twice to have a bigger card that could move, but in the end I let it just be this size just because it was easier to have it straight. So I'm adding that, making sure it is centered, and then I'm also adding it on the top. Now, while I was running it through my die cutting machine, I put a piece of printer paper on top of it, just to avoid all the wrinkling of my cutting plate showing up on this panel, and it sort of avoids the big creases in your papers, if you know what I mean. It doesn't always avoid everything, but it helps. So I'm securing that as well with some purple tape, and then I'm going to run it through. And then it's time to add everything together. Now, as you saw me just fold those flaps over, putting it in that slit, and then I am ready to add the image. So I prefer, when I'm making a more complicated card, to use Scor Tape. I think it's more secure, but you can use whatever you want. Also, if this part of the moving mechanism is too wide, you can always cut it smaller, but for the balloon it was perfect. Then I'm going to turn this panel around and add these two pieces on the back to make sure that the moving mechanism will be going straight up. Also, again, using some Scor Tape. And there are several ways to add these, or to adhere these pieces. I would suggest using the second way. You will see what I did here. I actually added the small piece to fold it closed inside, and I think it didn't do anything here, but if you're working with really thick cardstock, I think it can block the moving a bit. So just add it on the outside, like I did here, but I added the Scor Tape wrongly, and well, just wanted to show you two ways. Here you can see it's on the outside, and that will definitely not block anything. Now that one is working. Happy life. Then I am making sure that the moving mechanism is all the way down, and then I can cut off the excess of this strip, and then I will add that tiny piece that is cut off again, just to have everything the same. Like my scenery is running through. That's what I want. But you can also add some other details on top. I'm going to add these clouds as I sort of did before, just using some liquid glue. This will not block the moving mechanism because it's on the back, and there is enough space for the slit and the balloon to go up and down. Now there is this piece where you can, well, you can embellish that pulling thingy. But I'm going to only use this arrow because I want my scene to be continuous, as I said. So I'm using this little part, and I'm just going to add it with some liquid glue on top. Or some Scor Tape, or a combination. A combination. I already forgot, I'm sorry. Sometimes there is quite a lot of time between making the card and doing the voiceover. So then the editing is done already some weeks ago, and yeah, you know, I'm a bit behind, but I'm catching up, you know. So when you're using a moving mechanism, it's always handy if you have some foam tape on the back of your panel that will help you also to grab the moving mechanism. If I would redo this panel, I would definitely add 2 layers of the Scor Tape, of the foam tape, I'm sorry. But in this case I did only 1. But you can choose. It works like this as well, but I think it's even more handy if you add 2 layers. But as you know me, I don't make a lot of moving cards. I'm not a card engineer. I prefer clean and simple, so this is quite a simple card actually, but with the moving mechanism I think it's just a bit extra. And sometimes we need to make a card a bit extra. For my colleague, it's worth it. So before saying that this card is finished, I'm going to add some iridescent bubbles, tiny, from Studio Katia. Of course, iridescent is always a good choice. And then the bubbles, well, it's still masculine, I think. I must admit, if I'm making masculine cards, I often go for the simple cards, just because the guys I know that get the card from me from time to time aren't really about all those fussy things. So keeping it simple, but sometimes we need a bit extra, and then iridescent is the way to go if you ask me. So adding these bubbles a bit everywhere, and then I'm going to test the mechanism again, also making sure that when I'm adding these bubbles that will not stop the mechanism from moving, because it's higher up, it's more dimension, so it was just right on that cloud on the left. And that's actually it. That is the card. You can add more if you want to, but I'm keeping it as simple as possible. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I don't make a lot of these fancy cards, I think, but I hope it was clear that I sort of said what I had to say. If you have any questions, you know where to find me. Just leave a comment and I will get back to you as soon as possible. I want to thank you all for stopping by and watching this video. I hope that you have an amazing day, and I promise to be back soon with some new crafting inspiration. Bye!